Hilchos Maaseh Hakorbanos Perek Chi, the laws of sacrificial procedures, chapter 9. Today is the last day where we're going to be talking about the specifics of how to offer different sacrifices. We had a chapter on the burnt offering, 2 on the sin offering, and today we're going to be dealing with the other animal offerings, the asham, the guilt offering, the shlamim, the peace offering, which itself has multiple categories, the communal peace offering, individual peace offering, the toida, the thanksgiving offering. And then at the end we're going to be dealing with, in very short, B'cher Maaseh v'Pesach, the firstborn offering, tithe offering, and the Passover offering, which all share the same laws. Basically, the how-to of all the other animal offerings. And from there, tomorrow we're going to move on to how to eat, to consume the offerings, and then we'll deal with the flour offering, the mincha, and so on, taking us through the end of these laws. So let's get right to it. Halacha Aleph. Mitzvah saseh, it's a positive mitzvah. Lases kol ha'ashamis, ki mitzvasan ha'amura b'Torah. To perform the sacrificial rites for all the guilt offerings, like the mitzvah stated in the Torah. B'ketzad maaseh ha'ashamis. How indeed do we go about performing the offering of the asham, of the guilt offering? Ben asham vadai, ben asham toli, whether it's a definite guilt offering or a doubtful guilt offering. In certain cases, as the Rambam said, when you bring a doubtful guilt offering, if you're not sure whether you committed a sin, which would require you to bring a korban chatas, a sin offering, then out of the doubt, you bring an asham toli. But as long as Torah classifies it as an asham, the procedure is the same. You begin with the classic slaughtering, accepting the blood, sprinkling it on the mizbeach, as we explained. Umafshit, you skin it. Umoitzi ha'emurin, take out the parts that are meant to be offered on the mizbeach. Umoilchan, salt them. Bezerkan al gaval ishim, and throw them on the fire. Basically resembling the other offerings that we've been learning about till now. If you want to take them in a utensil, you can take them by hand, you can take them. The rest of the meat is eaten by the male Kohanim in the temple courtyard, kechatas, just like a sin offering. Halacha beis, asham mitzoira yesh bekabalas damoy shinoi. There's one difference when it comes to receiving the blood, specifically of the guilt offering associated with the mitzoira, with the person who has been healed from tsaras, from the skin lesions. As will be explained in the laws that relate to the Mitzvah and his offerings, called Hilchos Mechusre Kapara, at the end of the next book. That's just one slight change, though. V'afal pikein, nevertheless, sha'ar ma'asav, the rest of the procedures, uzrikas damei al hamizbeach va'achilase, the way you sprinkle its blood on the mizbeach and the way you eat it, kish'aro ashamas l'chol davar, is like any guilt offering for any other matter. And that is the asham. And now we move on to the shlamim, the peace offering. Asiyas kol shlamim ki mitzvasan, says the Rambam Halacha Gimel, performing all of the rites associated with the peace offering, as their mitzvah dictates. Mitzvah saseh is a fulfillment of a positive commandment. Ve'hein arba'a minin, and there are actually 4 categories of shlamim, of peace offering. Ha'echad shalmei tzibur, v'hashleisha shalmei yachid. One of them is a communal peace offering, and one of them is, or the other 3, are individual peace offerings. V'ketzad ma'aseh shalmei tzibur, how do we go about the rites of the communal peace offering? The communal peace offering was brought once a year on Shavuos. There was a shtei halechem, a special sacrifice of 2 loaves of bread that were brought, accompanied by 2 sheep. And these 2 sheep were offered as communal peace offerings. How did you go about offering them? So you slaughter and sprinkle the blood, as we explained. Skin it, take out the parts that are going on the mizbeach, salt them and offer them on the altar. And the rest is eaten by the male Kohanim in the temple courtyard, just like a sin offering and the guilt offering. For as we explained, these are in the category of the holiest of sacrifices. They must be eaten only in the temple courtyard, only by male Kohanim. When it comes to the individual peace offerings, there are 3 categories. The first one is the simplest one. That's when you bring an animal as a peace offering with no accompanying breads. Classically that would be on holidays. Celebratory shlamim, joy, the shlamim of joy. There's an obligation to be joyful on holidays, and the way we be joyful, at least in temple times, was through meat. You bring a shlamim, invite friends. Shlamim, that's the classic. When you hear the word shlamim, regular peace offering, that's what it's referring to. A regular animal with no bread, simply celebratory. The second category would be shlamim habayim im halechem beneder nedava. It's a peace offering which is brought together with bread as a result of a promise or a donation made. V'zeu hanikra toida. That is called the thanksgiving offering. The bread which comes along with it is called the bread of the thanksgiving offering. The Hamin Hashlishi, the third category of individual peace offering, is Shlamim Shemakriv HaNazir B'Yoyim Melois Nizrei, the peace offering offered by the Nazirite when he concludes his term of Nizirus, whatever time he took upon himself not to drink wine or cut his hair, etc. The peace offering that he brings also comes with bread, V'zeu Hanikra El Nazir. In Talmudic halachic literature, it's called the ram of the Nazir. And we're going to go through each one individually. What is the procedure for offering all three of these shlomims? So when it comes to the animal, it's a simple, slaughter it, sprinkle the blood as we explained, skin it, take out the parts that are going in the mizbeach, and then, before just offering it on the altar, you need to cut open the flesh, and you separate what's called the breast area and the right thigh. And if you want to look at this picture here, you can see where it's highlighted. The breast is a pretty wide swath of flesh, this whole area, the red, and the right thigh is basically from the top, literally, of the leg, all the way till the joint. So the parts that are highlighted in red, pink, that's the chazav v'shaik. V'noisin ha'emurin, im ha'chazav v'hashaik, and then you take the usually separated parts that go to Hashem, plus this breast and thigh, and you put it al yedei ha'bailim, on the hands of the owner who's offering the sacrifice. The kohen maniach yadei tachas yedei ha'bailim. The kohen would place his hand under the hands of the owner, umeinif hakoil lifnei Hashem b'mizrach, and he would wave it in front of Hashem together in the east side of the temple courtyard. This is supposed to be an illustration of the waving that was done with the korban toida, which we'll soon talk about the Thanksgiving offering, but the idea of the waving, you see the owner's hands are right attached to the plate, or whatever is holding the stuff, and the kohen puts his hands under the owner's hands. In fact, anytime you require waving in whatever sacrifice it may be, it's always done in the east side of the temple courtyard. Once we're talking about waving, let's just get into it for a second. What is the procedure for waving? You bring it forward, you bring it backward, you bring it upward, you bring it downward. If we're talking about a Thanksgiving offering, which again we'll get into the details in a moment, there's going to be breads that are coming along with the offering. So you take part of the breads, echad me'asara, 1 out of every 10. Again, we're going to see this in a moment, just get it all in detail. With the Thanksgiving offering, there came 40 loaves of bread, 10 loaves of 4 different categories. And so what you would do is you would take 1 from every category, and put it on the plate with the breast and the thigh and the parts that are usually separated, and you wave it together with the owner, as we just explained. What is exactly the order of placement? I know here there's a plate, but it's not exactly accurate. There was a way that all of these parts were placed on the hands of the owner. The first thing is the fats. Right? Every sacrifice, as we saw a couple chapters ago, you would take what's called the greater omentum, or the lesser omentum, some say, different layers of fats that cover the digestive system, and you put those on the hands of the owner directly. The chazav v'shaik l'mayla, on top of that you would place the breast and the thigh. And above that the 2 kidneys and the caudate lobe of the liver above them. If there's bread, you put it on top of the parts, and you wave it all. If we're talking about a Nazirite peace offering, and again you take out the parts that are going to go on the mizbeach, the fats and the kidneys. You also remove the thigh and the breast area, as we just explained. And there was a special procedure whereby they would cook the rest of the ram inside one of the 4 chambers of the women's courtyard. Remember when we learned the temple structure, in the initial courtyard there was 4 chambers. One of them was what's called Lishkas HaNazirim, the chamber of the Nazirites, where they would cook the remainder of the ram as part of his completion of his term. And the Kohen would take, as you can see here, he's removing one of the legs, one of the 4 legs, as it's cooked, with 1 out of every 10 of the breads that comes with the Nazirite ram, with the breast and the thigh and the parts that he had already separated, puts it all in the hands of the Nazirite. The Kohen puts his hands under the owner's hands, and they wave it all together, as we explained. So basically, if it's a regular shlamim, you're dealing just with the regular parts, the breast and the thigh. If it's a toida, you have to add the breads. If it's a nazir, you have to add also the cooked foreleg that was done in this area in the Ezras Nashim in the women's courtyard. Halacha yudei zehu chaza. What classifies as the breast area? So I showed you this pink part, but the Rambam kind of defines it. It's kol haraya es hakarka. All of the portion of the front of the animal that sees the ground. L'maylo ad hatzavar, lemata ad hakares. All the way up to the neck point, all the way down to the paunch, the digestive system. And when you cut it out, you also cut two of the ribs at the edge of the rib cage on either side. What is called the foreleg? When we talk about the Nazarite's foreleg, what classifies as the foreleg? So it's the bottom part over here. From the point of the joint, here's the humerus bone, you go down, from this joint till the bottom of the foot. Which are really two limbs mixed one into the other. Because you go all the way down from here, you have two bones to the bottom. When we say foreleg, we mean always the right foreleg. And the opposite area on the back leg is the shaykh that we speak about in all places in relation to the peace offering, the back part also going down over here. So one's for the front leg, one's for the back leg. Again, the front leg was only used for the Nazarite, the back leg for every single shlomo. After you wave the proper parts that have to be waved, you salt the parts that have to be brought on the mizbeach and you actually offer them. But the breast and the thigh are eaten by the kohanim. While they were part of the waving ceremony, they don't get offered. Shanemar, as it says, ki es chazei hatnufa ve'es shoik hatruma. For the breast of the waving and the thigh of the raising, the verse continues, I have taken from the Jewish people from their peace offerings and I have given them, it's a gift to Aaron and his children, the kohanim. So it goes to the kohanim. And the rest of the peace offering goes back to the owner. He takes it home, makes a party with his friends. The kohanim can only have the right to their breast and thigh after the parts that are reserved for Hashem are offered. So the shlamim end up being a three-pronged offering. Part goes to Hashem, part goes to the kohanim, part goes to the owners, in that order. You first offer a part to Hashem. Once that's done, the kohanim can take their part, and then the owners take their part. Also, the additional parts of the Thanksgiving offering and their Nazarite's offering goes to the kohanim. All the bread that you wave, all the foreleg that you take out from the Nazarite's offering goes to the kohanim. The rest of the bread that wasn't waved, the rest of the meat, is eaten by the owners. The bread that are woven with the breast and the thigh from the Thanksgiving offering are called the separated portion of the Thanksgiving offering, the Hazrei Abshela, and the cooked foreleg, with the breast and the thigh. With the bread, from the Nazarite's offering, they're called the part that's removed from the Nazarite's offering. Who says the Rambam? The bread that's separated from the Thanksgiving offering and waved is actually in doubt whether it's in the category of truma, the grain gift to the Kohen. Therefore, on the one hand, if you're going to eat it, you're not going to be liable to the death penalty or to the extra fifth payment as you usually are when eating truma. Also, if it falls into a mixture of other breads, it's not going to make the whole mixture forbidden as truma does, because it's only a doubt whether it's considered truma. If the owner of the Thanksgiving offering himself, the person bringing it, was a Kohen, he still maintains the rest of the bread. Because the bread that comes with the Thanksgiving offering or with the rams of the Nazarite is not called mincha, flour offering. What does that have to do with anything? Well, we said before, in short, and we're going to learn about it later at length, that if a regular Jew brings a flour offering, part of it was offered on the Mizbeach, part of it was eaten by the Kohanim. But if a Kohen brings a flour offering, it all goes onto the altar. So one could think that maybe the same difference applies when bringing a Thanksgiving offering. That only when a Jew brings a Thanksgiving offering, part of the bread goes to the Mizbeach, part of the bread goes to him. But when it comes to a Kohen, it should all go to Hashem. It says no. Since the bread is not called mincha, doesn't have the same laws as a mincha. Rather, a Kohen is treated exactly like a regular Jew. Part of the bread goes to the Mizbeach, and part of the bread he takes home. Halacha tezvav shnayim she'iviu shlamim b'shutfus. Two people brought a peace offering in partnership. Ha'echad meinif b'reshus chaveirei. Only one person should wave it with the permission of his friend. Afilu heimea, even if it's 100 partners, echad meinifai de kulan, one could wave for them all. Masha'en kin bismicha, not so by leaning. In chapter 3, when we talk about leaning, every partner's got to lean. One at a time, but every partner's got to lean. Halacha tazayin, hoisa isha ba'alas hakorban, if it was a woman bringing the sacrifice, eina menifa aval hakohen menif. She doesn't wave, only the kohen does. Shakarbana ton tnufa, v'hi psula li tnufa. Her sacrifice requires waving, but she's not authorized to wave. The only women that ever wave are a suspected adulteress and a Nazirite woman. They're the only ones. Otherwise, if they're bringing a shlamim, only the Kohen waves it. Waving always is performed before bringing the sacrifice close to the altar. Halacha Yud Zayin, we keep on mentioning the bread. How does it work? This bread that you bring together with the thanksgiving offering. Leikeach esrim isarein seilas. You take 20 isarein of flour. This is a lot of flour. I found the video on YouTube where a guy puts out what it should be. These are, proper 5-pound sacks of flour. And look how many there are. I mean, this is huge. This is very, very big. Just to be obligated in challah, you need so much less. Every time you brought a thanksgiving offering, this is how much flour you had to buy. At least according to the Chazon Ish, that's the video here. According to Rambam Chaim Noah, it might be a little less by a third or almost by half, but still a lot. You divide the 20 isarim into 10 that are going to be turned into leavened bread, chametz, and 10 that are going to be kept as matzah, not allowed to rise. Ha'asara shel chametz, the 10 isreinos of flour that are going to be reserved for leavened bread, oisam eser chalas, are turned into 10 loaves of challah. The ketzad mechamtzan, how do you make them become leavened? Maybe sa'ir kedei chimutzan, you take enough yeast that would be needed to make this dough rise. V'noyis nedasei chamida, put it into the measuring cup which we're going to use for the flour. Umemali samida, and then you fill it over and above that with flour. Alfa pisha seifa liyas chaseira or yesera mipnei sa'ir, even though it might be that you're going to be lacking some flour, because part of the measuring cup is being filled by yeast, or the yeast will cause it to overflow and overpuff, and it's going to be bigger. Because sometimes the dough will be hard and tough, sometimes it'll be soft. Doesn't matter. We only care about the measurement right now. And you're counting them out in measuring cups of full esreinos. So 1 isarin of flour turns into 1 loaf of chametz. The other 10 esreinim of flour which you put aside to be matzah loaves. You make 30 equal-sized chalas. Eser chalas mikol min, 10 of each of 3 types. Eser chalas ma'afei tanur, 10 baked in an oven. The eser chalas rikikim, 10 wafers. The eser chalas murbeches, and 10 baked in a pan. The same guy who did a shir on what a korban toida is, he puts out a sample of these breads. This is a chametz loaf. You can see it's leavened and risen. This is the regular chalas, ma'afei tanur. They're thick, but they haven't been allowed to rise. Rikikin is more flat, like a pita, and revucha is made in a pan with oil. As the Rambam says, V'keitzad hiya murbeches, how does the pan-fried challah be made? Chilta bereischin, you scald the flour in hot water. V'oifa isa ma'at, and you cook it lightly, you bake it lightly. V'achar kach koila isa b'shemen ala ilpas, and then you fry it with oil in a pan, v'chayetze boi, and similar to that, kederech shekoilin hasufganin, as you would usually fry donuts, deep fried donuts. Umar bin b'shamna, you put a lot of oil, it should be deep fried. Whenever Torah speaks about ribuch, it means this procedure of lightly scalding in water, transferring to oil, deep frying it in a pan. How much oil should be used on these 30 breads? A half a leg of oil cover all the breads. And this amount is directly received from tradition of Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai. A quarter of a log goes for the deep fried in the pan. An eighth goes to the regular baked chalas, and an eighth goes to the wafer chalas. Halacha chaf aleph hachalais, when talking about these baked in the oven chalas, loises haseilas shalahen bishminis shel shemen, you mix the flour in the oil that was provided, the achar kach losh ve'ifayis, and then you knead it and you bake it. Varekik in the wafers, moishchan bishminis shalahen achar afiyos, and you don't mix the oil into the dough, you actually anoint it with oil after the baking. As we said before, the Kohen for the waving takes 1 of each type, 4 total. For it says, 1 from every type of sacrifice. What if a person didn't make the 40 breads? He made it into 4 big breads, one of each category, but massive ones. Yatsa, you have fulfilled your obligation. The idea of 40 is the ideal optimum mitzvah, but you must do at least one of each type. Provided that you separate challah from each of the types while they're still dough. Because you cannot separate a part of a loaf. It has to be a complete loaf. It says you have to take one unit, one full unit, not a half a unit. And that's the bread that comes with the Thanksgiving offering. What about the bread that comes with the Nazarite's offering? A pretty defined amount. 6 2/3 isreinis of flour. And you make 20 loaves. The hakol matzah, they're all matzah, not allowed to rise. 10 of the flatter wafers, anointed with oil. The eser chales leises haselos shalahen bashemen, and 10 of the chales is where you mix the flour with the oil in preparing the dough. The hakil mafetano, but all 20 are baked in an oven. The shemen shalahen revi is you use 1/4 of a log of oil total for these breads. V'shir zez also halachah l'meisha misinai, also received in tradition, even though Torah just says oil. We know how much oil it is from Moshe Rabbeinu. And so too over here, like by the Taida, the Kohen takes one of each type. So for the Taida, it's 4 types, 4 breads. Here it's 2 types, 2 breads. It says the Rambam Malacha Chav Dalet Shnei Mimi Lechem Shebenazir V'Arba Mimi Lechem Shebetaida. The 2 types of breads for the Nazarite and the 4 for the Thanksgiving offering, Ma'akvin Zeh, are essential to each other. U'Maaseh Halechem Shel Shnei and Chutz La'azara, and they were made outside of the temple courtyard. This is supposed to be a depiction of baking the breads. They had a special place they would make them, outside temple courtyard. And that covers the 4 categories of shlamim of peace offering. And the last halacha of this chapter, the Rambam goes to the 3 other types of sacrifices. Keitzad Maaseh Abcher Va'Maser Va'Pesach. How was the procedure of offering firstborn offerings, tithe offerings, and Passover offerings? It says the Rambam, Achar Shazedek Daman Kamesha Beyarnu. After you sprinkle the blood, as we explained in the normal way, for them, which is a special pouring. It's not a sprinkling on the walls. It's one pouring at the base of the mizbeach. You skin them, take out the parts that are reserved for Hashem, salt them, and offer them. When it comes to the firstborn offering, whatever is left over goes to the Kohen. The tithe offering goes to the owners. And left over the Passover offering goes to all those that had registered to be part of the group, as the halacha states, as will be explained in the beginning of the next book, in the section of laws dealing with the Passover sacrifice.